prevailing narrative fixates on launch signatures and missile trajectories. This is a fatal miscalculation. It is an obsession for strategists who still believe symmetric warfare is solvent. It is not. The kinetic cost of projecting power has outpaced the economic capacity to sustain it. Adversaries understand this mathematical certainty. They have shifted protocols. As Russian forces adapt with low-cost drone tactics, the blueprint becomes clear. It is not about matching force, but about maximizing leverage. This is asymmetric economic warfare disguised as a kinetic skirmish. But even drones are a distraction. The primary vector of attack is not explosion, it is silence. RUSI and CSIS have repeatedly flagged the systemic vulnerability of the global data infrastructure. Trillions of dollars in transactions, military commands, and diplomatic communiques travel through a handful of undersea fiber optic cables. The second vector is optic denial. Satellite blinding. A temporary loss of signal is not an inconvenience. It is a decapitation of the network. Without the constant stream of data, the U.S.-led system ceases to function. Its financial instruments, dependent on instantaneous settlement, enter a liquidity crisis. Its alliances, which shared the burden in conflicts like Afghanistan, are isolated. This creates the blind Leviathan, a superpower with unmatched kinetic force but no central nervous system to command it. Its aircraft carriers are adrift. Its launch-on-warning protocols are triggered by ghosts in the machine. This is the strategic objective, not to defeat the military, but to render it irrelevant by bankrupting the system it was built to protect. The attack is not on the body. It is on the brain. The central motive is not conquest. It is solvency. For an adversary like Russia, a symmetric, conventional war against the U.S.-led financial and military apparatus is unwinnable. The kinetic cost is mathematically prohibitive. A single main battle tank is an expenditure of millions. A single advanced fighter jet, hundreds of millions. A sustained campaign is an act of national bankruptcy. CSIS analysis highlights the core domestic liability of prolonged, unpopular wars. For any regime, maintaining power requires managing internal economic and political stability. An expensive, high-casualty foreign war erodes that stability, creating a direct threat to the leadership itself. The primary objective, therefore, is not to defeat a U.S. carrier group, but to avoid a solvency crisis at home. This weakness forces a pivot to asymmetry. It is a strategic mandate driven by a balance sheet. Reports confirm Russia's adoption of new Shahed drone attack tactics. This is not just a battlefield innovation, it is a financial one. The strategy is to deploy thousands of low-cost vectors to force the expenditure of high-cost interceptors, attacking the economic foundation of Western air defense. This blueprint extends beyond the kinetic. As the petrodollar system itself comes under pressure, the incentive to decouple becomes systemic. Russia's calls for diplomacy, such as urging U.S.-Iran talks, are a form of asymmetric action, a low-cost protocol to dilute U.S. influence and expose its overextension without deploying a single battalion. The U.S. reliance on allies, where 1 in 3 coalition deaths in Afghanistan were non-U.S. personnel, reveals the distributed nature of its power projection. Asymmetric strategies are designed to fracture these fragile alliances by imposing disproportionate costs. The objective is to make participation in the U.S.-led system a liability, not an asset, forcing a systemic retreat by triggering a solvency cascade. The math behind asymmetric escalation is irrefutable. According to a cost-of-kill analysis by analysts at RUSI, the Royal United Services Institute, the core economic liability of the U.S. system is exposed in a simple calculation. A state actor deploys a main battle tank, a kinetic asset valued at $5 million. An adversary counters with a $500 commercial drone. This is not a fair fight. It is a solvency crisis executed via spreadsheet. The cost to neutralize a high-value asset is now thousands of times lower than the cost to field it. This principle is the democratization of violence. Lethal strategic capability is no longer the exclusive domain of superpowers. It has been outsourced to anyone with a cheap drone and a tactical objective, a blueprint Russia is actively refining with new Shahed drone attack tactics. The objective is not to destroy an army, it is to bankrupt the treasury that funds it. Every engagement becomes a net negative financial transaction, a systemic bleed designed to accelerate a solvency cascade. The primary theater of operations is no longer a designated war zone. It is a global network of gray zones. These are not the cause of conflict. They are proxy laboratories for staging attacks on the system's core liability, its financial solvency. Regional instability, from resource nationalism in places like South Africa to internal political friction in allied states like Canada, is deliberately exploited. These zones serve as incubation hubs for low-cost, high-leverage vectors, bypassing conventional military engagement entirely. Russian-Iranian strategic dialogues, source number 1, and the refinement of drone swarm protocols, source number 2, are not isolated events. They are blueprints for weaponizing logistics and economics from within these gray zones. The objective is not kinetic defeat, but to trigger a solvency crisis by making the cost of projecting power, a cost historically subsidized by allies, source number 3, mathematically prohibitive. This is the direct consequence of a petrodollar framework under systemic pressure, source number 4. The launch on warning doctrine is not a strategy. It is a protocol dictated by physics and geography. According to analysts at CSIS, the protocol was engineered to solve a single terminal problem, the 30-minute flight time of an intercontinental ballistic missile. If a nation waits for physical confirmation of impact, its capacity for retaliation is liquidated. The doctrine therefore mandates a retaliatory launch based on data from satellites and radar, not on verified detonations. It is a system built to trust the signal, not the reality. This protocol is now the system's primary liability. Adversaries priced out of symmetric warfare understand this. They do not need to build a missile. They need to manipulate the signal. A low-cost, high-leverage cyber attack targeting early warning systems creates the fog of digital war. This is the modern battle space, mirroring the adaptive, low-cost tactics seen with Russian drone swarms. It is an attack vector designed to blind the system, creating a vacuum where a decision must be made. Inside the command center, the screens go black. Emergency lighting floods the room in red. The commander faces a zero-sum choice dictated by protocol. Is the signal loss a mundane technical failure, or is it a deliberate blinding action preceding a decapitation strike? The doctrine of launch on warning removes the luxury of waiting for an answer. The absence of data becomes the data. Fear of systemic annihilation forces the commander's hand toward the launch key. This is the strategic trap. The erosion of the petrodollar framework makes conventional military dominance financially unsustainable, forcing adversaries toward asymmetric vectors. As our reliance on fragile alliances grows, a vulnerability exposed in theaters like Afghanistan, where non-U.S. forces sustained heavy casualties, the entire system becomes brittle. The cyber attack is not designed to defeat an army. It is designed to trigger a solvency crisis in the command structure itself. Economic weakness has created a mathematical certainty where a line of code can become a direct accelerant for nuclear escalation. The final phase is the calibration shot. Within the next 12 months, expect a coordinated, multi-vector shutdown of a critical U.S. logistics hub. The target will not be a carrier group. It will be a primary maritime port's data and power infrastructure, for instance, the Port of Long Beach or Houston. This is not a kinetic strike in the conventional sense. It is an act of economic warfare executed with asymmetric tools. Analysts at CSIS document that adversaries are mastering new drone swarm tactics, evolving beyond simple munitions. The attack will utilize dozens of commercially derived UAVs to execute precise, low-yield strikes on fiber optic switching stations and power regulators. The physical damage will be minor, reparable in weeks. The economic damage will be immediate and systemic, halting billions in trade and triggering a liquidity crisis in the supply chain. The event will be engineered for attribution impossible status. The goal is not to provoke a symmetric military response, which has become prohibitively expensive. The goal is to force a strategic dilemma. Without a culprit, any military retaliation is an escalation without justification, a trap the U.S. is being warned against. The inaction, however, signals a catastrophic failure of deterrence. This is the core liability of a system dependent on fragile alliances and diminishing financial solvency. The adversary is not testing America's carrier groups. It is testing the solvency of the U.S. Treasury in a crisis. This is the mathematical certainty of asymmetric escalation. The calibration shot is designed to prove that the cost of projecting power now exceeds the value of the currency that underwrites it.